Alrighty. So me and Chandler are going to be breaking down our top teams for our power conferences in college basketball. So where we want to start here? Where you want to start?
Wherever you want to start. It doesn't really matter to me.
All right. Let's see. I'll just go down the list. You want to go ACC first? I'll go ACC first.
That's fine. That'll work.
Alrighty. Now, how you want to do this? What kind of way you want to do this?
So I'll just kind of give a little bit of an overview.
All right.
I think the ACC this year will probably have um, quite a few teams that take a pretty big leap. I think you're looking at a couple of coaching hires that really kind of elevated this conference. NC State kind of hiring Will Wade, and you've also got let's see, who is it here? I also think that Miami, after the pitiful season that they kind of had last year, I really think that they have a decent enough roster to make a big turnaround. I'm not saying they're a tournament team, but I do think that they'll be far better than what they were last year. I also think that
Louisville made a big
Stanford is
jump
a
too.
team. Yeah, last year absolutely. But I think Stanford's one of those teams that um, you kind of let them hang around. They'll turn around and beat you. Um, but I do think that I know last year they had 4 bids. I think this year you're looking at maybe the floor being 6. Yeah,
I'm looking at 7 or 8 right now.
I could definitely see a realistic chance in which you get 8 teams. Um, I'm not real sure though that's what the season's for. We'll have to let it play out that way. But that's kind of my look at it. Is I think this year, last year they were kind of the doormat for everybody else. I mean, they got massacred in the ACC SEC Challenge. Just got ran over. And Duke and Louisville were pretty much the only 2 teams that were really worth um, any media really. Carolina was
Decent.
okay, but
Decent.
they
Yeah.
really didn't deserve a chance.
They shouldn't have been in the tournament. I ain't even gonna lie.
Right. But I think you see that take a big step this year. There's going to be more competition within the league. You got a couple of teams that really done a good job scheduling, and they'll be more prepared and more battle tested come March.
Yeah. I think Miami is like a really good representation of just kind of the ACC as a whole, just making a big jump this year. Because that season last year, it was pretty bad. I think that's just kind of a good way to summarize the ACC is Miami being able to come off that and might be able to beat some teams. So, I
Yeah.
yeah,
So go ahead.
right now, I'm looking at Duke winning the conference. I think I don't know.
Well,
I'll
I'll tell you
just see
what. Let's
that.
do it
That's the
like
best I
this. So
see.
I've got it. I've kind of got it in front of me here. I've got the my top to bottom for each conference in front of me here. And if you want to, I mean, we can just kind of take it back and forth. You said Duke is yours.
Yeah, it's fine.
I had a hard time. I had a hard time with that. I still think Duke is kind of the team to beat, just solely because I think from a roster perspective, they definitely have the most talent within the ACC. But I actually don't have them win the conference. I actually have Louisville winning the conference. If you take a look, um, the thing that kind of got me was statistically last year. Louisville was not They were top 100 in points per game, scoring 78.5 a game, and then they were also um, top. Well, they were 65th in the country last year in points per game, 62nd in defensive rebounds. You know, the rest they were outside the top 100. But I think a lot of Louisville's issue last year was that they had quite a few injuries that hurt them, and once again, the ACC kind of gave grace, I guess you can say it that way. Because there wasn't a whole lot of teams that was going to come in and day out and really contend with you. And Louisville had a pretty tough um, or a pretty soft schedule in comparison. And Duke all the way around last year, 11th in the country in points per game, 17th in assists per game. The only thing they were outside of the top 100 was in offensive rebounds. They were 18th in defensive rebounds and 8th in turnovers. And they just, but I think a lot of that is also due to Cooper Flag. I mean, there were
Yeah, that's true.
times I listened to a podcast actually earlier today, and they described it to a T. There were times that offensively Duke was not really that great. Cooper Flag was kind of their saving grace in moments where
That was the source
where
of
they
their
really
offense for sure, especially
yeah
in the
and
tournament.
um, yeah and defensively, man, they were really they were really good defensively. They're long. Um, just lots of length, and that bothers teams, especially when you have, um, you know, guys that defend as well as what they did. I mean, John Shire's got them playing defense, and that's never really seemed to me their mo. Even under Coach K, they've never really been a defensively, you know, a defensive powerhouse. They've always been able to shoot well. They've always had the offensive pieces for as long as I've been watching them play. But it seems like Shire's got them playing defensively at the best that I've ever seen the Duke team play, especially last year. They
Yeah,
bothered people.
I mean
Um,
Alabama. That's a good example. Alabama in the Elite Eight. They were the highest scoring team in the nation. They held them to what, 65? They held them 65. That was really tough to do,
uh,
especially last year.
I just think, to me, the reason I have Louisville first is I think that I think that Pat Kelsey is I think he's a better coach. I know
Mm.
Shire has been good. But he's got his guys. When Coach K kind of took his tour, his last hoorah or whatever you want to call it. He also turned that over and said, "Hey, this is my last year. This is who we're going to name as a coach," and it allowed Shire to be able to build a roster, to be able to start recruiting his guys for his system, and it made that transition so much easier for Duke in that perspective. And that's kind of a big deal, to be able to do that, and you know, to have that extra year to kind of take the reins, but you can kind of zone in on the things that you're looking for, and you don't really have to put them out there just yet. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Um, it's to me it just seems like it was a kind of a walk in the park as far as transitionally. Um, but I think Louisville. I think the one thing about the comparison with Louisville and Duke, um, I mean they were obviously the two best teams last year. I don't think that changes this year. I mean, I really don't. I mean, Carolina. I watched their scrimmage. They looked good against BYU. They still have some kinks to work out. I think Virginia is going to be much improved, and I think Virginia is going to take some people by surprise. It's not going to be the same boring basketball that you've seen with Tony Bennett. Um, it's they're probably going to be fun to watch.
I know.
You know, NC State is the team that scares me to death, and I hate to admit that as a Carolina fan, but having Will Wade come in, he's kind of got this um, aura around him that he don't really care what anybody thinks. He doesn't really care what this person has to say or that person has to say. He's kind of got that a little bit of cockiness about him, and I really think that for a team like NC State, he can get them guys to rally around him and possibly be in contention up there with the big guys in Louisville and Duke. If they can get a few things to roll their way. But with that being said, I've got Louisville 1 and I got Duke 2. I think I speak for both of us. That's probably our top 2. I know you said you had Duke at 1.
I
I'm
got
assuming
Louisville
you have
too.
Louisville at 2.
Yeah.
So I went out on a limb here just based off what I saw in the scrimmage. And I do think if I've got Carolina at 3,
Oof.
I think if we can get the backcourt to come along, I think if Trimble um, can if they can find somebody to run a decent point, I like our front court. I like Vasar, and I also like Caleb Wilson. Obviously, he's a monster. But I also like the addition of Jaron Stevenson.
Yeah, come on. Why do you have to
Coming
leave?
over from Alabama, he he seems to he seems to be a good fit. But obviously, I mean, I think Carolina could end up. I think Carolina has the potential. I'm not really understanding a lot of these people that say that they don't like this Carolina roster. You know, I guess I can understand, but I also don't see what the issue is. The issue last year was we lacked size. So what do? You go get size. You go get a 7-foot big man to play the middle that can also play, you know, beyond the arc. He can shoot the 3 ball, but he's an inside presence. You know, that's a staple. You lacked it last year. You were still able to make the tournament, even though you were particularly in a down year by Carolina standards. So,
One
what's
and
your main
some. Yeah.
priority in the offseason? Yeah, I mean, you go out and get a big guy, and that's what they did, and possibly one of the best bigs that you could go out and get. In the transfer portal, in Henry Vasar. But with that being said, I obviously think that you can put Carolina anywhere from first to, I mean, I'll even say up to 7th.
Yeah.
Um, it just depends on how their backcourt comes along.
So for me, I think the 3 and 4 spot, like just kind of that range from 3 to 6, was tougher than because obviously I think Duke and Louisville lead the pack. In my opinion, that was a lot easier than the rest. But at number 3, I got State. I mean, of course, bringing in Will Wade's a big thing, but of course, for that you got all these guys that are following him. Trey Holloman from Michigan State, and of course they brought in Williams. I don't know. I just see them being pretty tough to deal with. I got UNC right behind them, but I don't know. I
Well,
just think
see,
be a little
we've
bit
got
more.
those flipped too. I've got State at 4.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it sounds like we're kind of on the right track here. And like I said, I mean, I think any of those are, I think Louisville and Duke are interchangeable, and I also think Carolina and NC State are interchangeable. I mean, it just solely
definitely.
depends.
That's why the
Um,
season's played for. And that next
right.
spot is tough to determine too.
I think we'll probably disagree here on the number 5 team. I've got Virginia.
Well, I don't know. It's tough because I like Virginia in this. Like you said, they ain't gonna be boring this year or the normal Tony Bennett, but it's tough. I think I'm pretty high on SMU. I don't think they're gonna be too bad. Stanford will play a role. I don't think it'll be as high as 5, but it'll be close.
Yeah, I think Virginia, like I said, I think new coach, and obviously, you know, it's kind of tough to predict with new coaches, how teams are going to be. But I think a lot of people, that especially your casual watchers, are going to look at this and they're going to say, I don't see how Virginia makes it up there to the top 5 or 6 in the ACC. The ACC's weak. Whatever their argument be, I think people are going to be surprised that when they turn Virginia basketball on, they're gonna see a completely different team.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not going to say that they're going to play at breakneck speed. I'm not going to say they're going to play at a pace like Carolina. Um, the guys that like to run a gun, but you're not going to see. Used to, it was if Virginia scored 60 points, you were beat most of the time. Um, if they could hold you to 55, 60 points, and they could score, anywhere from 62 to 70, you were losing 90% of the time. They were just that good. But that's over and done with. I'm not saying they're not going to be a good team defensively. I just don't think that's going to be their identity. But I will say this: I do have them at 5, but I have SMU at 6.
yeah. I mean, first two really close, and then of course 3 and 4 really close, and then I think 5 and 6 really close. Yeah, I got SMU. I really like what's his name? Kevin Miller, and then BJ Edwards. I like those boys. But
Yeah, SMU. Let me look right here, but I'm pretty sure that SMU last year was. Yeah, they were top 100 in everything except for turnovers. They turned the ball over quite a bit. They scored right at 80 points a game. That's 40th in the country. They averaged right at 16 assists a game. That's top 50. 12 and a half offensive boards a game. That's top 50, and then they average 26 defensive rebounds a game, which is top 75. I think offensively, you're looking at a team that can do some damage.
definitely.
I watched them a couple times last year, and they had no problem scoring the basketball.
So, I mean, if you want to go ahead and move on to the Big Ten, or if you want to stay on this, what do you want to do? Go a little further, or what do you want to do?
It doesn't matter. I'll just state the rest of my with
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
ACC. After SMU, I have Clemson,
I had
and
Clemson
then
after SMU.
I have Notre Dame after that. Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, Stanford. I had them down the list mainly because I could see them being probably as high as 7th. I could see them being where Clemson's at in my rankings. Um, I just it's hard to know what they're going to be, and there's always the travel spot too. Um, them and Cal have a bad draw when it comes to road games because they're going to be traveling,
Definitely.
across the
Yeah,
country.
that's tough.
So I'd probably move if they had more games locally, even when they had to travel. I would probably put them a couple spots higher, but for now, I've got them slotted there. After Stanford, I have Syracuse, and then I have Miami.
Yeah, I had Syracuse after Clemson at 8 actually, and then I had Wake and then Notre Dame at 10, and then I had Miami. So again, just kind of same thought, just kind of switched up a little bit.
Yeah, and then to round out the last 5, I got Pitt, Cal, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and I think Boston College is
Yeah,
probably the clear cut
yeah,
bottom dweller here.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, we can move on to the Big Ten or the Big 12, either one.
I'll go Big Ten. I wrote it down wrong, but that's no big deal.
Okay.
Um, So I think really there's a clear favorite for the Big Ten as far as I'm concerned. I really love Purdue. I like Kaufman Wren. I like Braden Smith. Braden Smith, I think, was averaging the most assists last year. He's a heck of a player. I just like Purdue definitely on top of the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, I've got Purdue. I'm not really high on Purdue. I'm not I know that Braden Smith's great. Kaufman Wren's really good player. I just don't understand the hype, especially of the preseason number one. Like, I just feel like there's better basketball teams out there than what Purdue
Yeah,
is.
preseason number one, I think is definitely a little too high for him. But I mean, at the same time,
I,
I do think they're definitely a top 10 team for me right now. Just
yeah,
regards of the
absolutely.
two.
I mean, I would even venture to say top five. But I mean, I'll be honest here, and I'm not a Duke fan. By no stretch of the imagination. I hope they lose every game for that matter. But you got to respect them. I think Duke's a better basketball team than Purdue. I think that you can look at probably, um, I mean, and I know this is probably what a lot of people default to, um, but Kentucky wore them out. And Kentucky wasn't even healthy. Now I know it's exhibition. I get it. You can tell a lot from exhibition. You can't tell it all. But they wore them out. I know the score was, I don't know, 10 points, something like that. I can't remember the exact score. But you know, from everything I've seen, it could have been worse. Um, I'm just don't understand the preseason. Number one, I think there's at least two or three teams that are a little bit better.
Which you really don't get a
Um,
good estimate of who your good teams are until really after, that Thanksgiving week and stuff with the invitationals and stuff like that. I actually have Houston
right,
as my number one team right now. I like Houston. I don't think Purdue is. I have Purdue at like six.
right, yeah, but I think the other thing too about having Purdue atop the Big Ten is solely due to I don't think the Big Ten is really that strong
No,
this year.
I mean
I,
honestly, you could put them at the bottom of all five of these conferences. The Big 12 is pretty good. SEC is SEC. ACC is taking a big leap, and I like the Big East too. I'm not
yeah,
real big on Big Ten. They can say whatever, but
I think for a conference that's got what is it, 18, 17 teams, 16 teams, something like that.
something.
I think for a conference that has that many teams, I mean, you're pretty much looking at a 5 to 6 horse race. And really, if you ask me, you're looking at about a 4 horse race. I don't think anybody outside these top four really have an opportunity to realistically win the Big Ten without some help.
Honestly, I
Um,
only have the Big Ten as a four bid team conference,
yeah,
four
and,
bid
and I can
conference.
and yeah, and I'll be honest. My top four is Purdue, and then I have Michigan State,
Hmm.
UCLA, and Illinois top four.
I got Purdue, I have UCLA, then I have Michigan State, then I have Michigan. I like Michigan. I just don't know what the hype is about them. I know they got that one dude they got from like Yale or something a few years ago, like 2 years ago. But
Danny
I don't
Wolf.
really understand the big hype about Michigan. I don't think they're gonna finish top three in the Big Ten. I think they may get like maybe a six seed in the tournament, maybe even like a play in if it goes bad. But so I got.
See, I have Michigan at five, and really the reason why I have them at five instead of four, Illinois. I know I know kind of last year and maybe even year before last to a degree. They were one of these giant killers. They'd come in and play the number one team overall and wear them out, and then they would lose to you know somebody they should have never had any business losing to, and then they'd come back and win a big game and lose us. Illinois was a little bit inconsistent. The issue that I have with Michigan, number one, is they picked up Elliot Cadeau from Carolina, and
I never liked
while
Cadeau.
I like I liked a lot of what Cadeau did in certain situations. I felt like when he would put his head down and try to go to the basket, I felt like that was good most of the time. But he also had a bad problem with getting into the teeth of the defense and losing the ball and turning the ball over. He struggled. And, if he's running point for Michigan, I just don't see, unless he's improved drastically, I really don't see a way in which, um, they don't get bit by the turnover bug quite a bit. And it just to me it just that's kind of the difference between Illinois and Michigan for me. And I could see Michigan even falling down. I've got Indiana and Iowa below them. I could see either of those, kind of jumping Michigan as well, just depending on I mean, how well Michigan plays. And
I truly right now, I have 9 teams in the Big Ten, and this is bottom line, 9 teams that are contending for a tournament spot right now. Like 9 teams, that's the floor that are contending to play in the NCAA tournament, and that's Purdue, Michigan, UCLA, Illinois, Oregon, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Ohio State. And half of those probably won't even make it. I'm not big on the Big Ten. I really only think it's going to be 3 Big Ten teams that are doing good in the league, but it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the team. I'm not high on Oregon, and I'm not high on Ohio State. Um, the team that I'd watch out for here is Northwestern. Um, I'm not saying that they're gonna be in the contention for the top four or anything. I just feel like there could be a couple of games where if they catch somebody in the right spot, don't be surprised if they win a couple of games that they probably shouldn't.
Which that's Big Ten basketball. There's a lot of mid teams beat some people they shouldn't, but
And, and
So
and the bottom dwellers that I have in that conference, I've got Nebraska, Washington, and Penn State bottom three.
nailed it. Yep. All right. I didn't really want to go in depth about the Big Ten that much. That's kind of the weak link of these 5, in my opinion. I'm not big on it. So I'll go to Big 12. My Big 12 winner right here is actually Houston. I love Houston. I'm real high on Houston. Um, and then I got Arizona because they got Toby Waka now, and then they still got a bunch of talent. Bryce James, um, Waka, of course, Burries. They got a bunch of people. I like Arizona finishing in second.
See, this may be a conference where we totally, um, and this is a tough conference. This is a tough conference to predict. They're really deep. I can count here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, I would even I could see this being an 8 to 9 bid league.
Oh yeah.
Um,
How many did they have
you
last
know,
year? 7,
I'm not
8.
sure. The SEC was unreal last year. It probably stole a couple of bids from
Yeah,
some
it did.
Big 12 teams that were deserving. I actually have Texas Tech win the conference. Um,
My back line. I
they
like it.
they went all in on their athletics. They're they may be one of the biggest spenders in the country. And I think that carries over a little bit into this basketball season. And um, I just think I'm not. I'll be honest here. I don't like Houston. I just don't like Houston. Um, that's I'll sit here and say it. It's biased. Um, but I got them. I got them at number two. Um, I just think Texas Tech kind of puts it together this year, but really, my opinion on the Big 12 is these my top three could interchange. I've got BYU at 3, and I watched Denbasta or Denbatsa, however you
Whatever,
pronounce his
man. Yeah,
name.
I got BYU at 3 too. I think one
It,
of the
it,
things that some people were talking about was that he's going to be able to provide to BYU what Cooper Flag did for Duke, but I don't see it. I don't see it at all, honestly. And again, I'm actually going to be really intrigued just to see that first matchup they have with Villanova, obviously, because I like them, but just to see how, of course, Nova does, and we'll get to that later, but also just to see how BYU does, because I'm not too big on them. I do think they'll finish top five in this in Big 12, but it's not guaranteed for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, and like I said, I watched Carolina and BYU the other night, and kind of the word that I was hearing about like Carolina was they had a lot of sloppiness, and which obviously you're replacing you're replacing R.J. Davis, you're replacing, um, a lot of your. I mean, Cadeau and RJ. That was kind of your two guys. Cadeau transfers out. RJ graduates. So you're replacing your front court, and that transitionally, it takes some time to make. And I'll be honest. I mean, both teams were sort of sloppy in that exhibition game, but it's an exhibition game. Like I said, you can take a lot away, but you can't take everything away. But one thing that I will say negatively towards BYU, I think they're going to be a good basketball team, and I think that they probably obviously finish top three in this conference. The biggest issue that I have with BYU is from what I'm hearing about Carolina and how they're being, they're kind of behind the eight ball still at this point, getting ready to ramp up into the season, kind of struggling with the turnover bug a little bit right now, and you play them at your place or in Utah and you beat them by two. I know it's exhibition. I understand, but, you know, that's a tough spot for Carolina. Even in an exhibition game, you're going to elevation. You're going to play at somebody else's place, even in the setting that it was in. And you have the best freshman in the country, and you're playing a team that is struggling to find the right mesh on the front court, and you beat them by two. Uh, you know, that's once again you reiterate the fact that that's why you play the season. Um, it just we'll see.
Yeah, round up my top five. I got Take State four. I love JT Toppin. I like him to be player of the year. I love JT Toppin, and then Kansas. I think Kansas. Bill Self always finds a way to finish up here, and he's going to find a way to keep doing. Even though I think the Big 12 is really tough this year.
Yeah. So to round up my top five, I've got Iowa State at four. I know they had a couple transfer out, but I think this is kind of the Virginia spot, like in the ACC with Tony Bennett. Iowa State is usually a defensive basketball team. They get after you, um, and that's tough, especially when you're playing in this conference. There's a lot of high powered offense. You score, 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 hoping you can outscore the opponent. I mean, Texas Tech, they're going to try to score. Houston, a little bit more defensive
Yeah,
basketball. Um, BYU, they're going to try to outscore you. Kansas, going to try to outscore you. Arizona, same song and dance. But really, to me, in this conference, you have two teams that try to play a different style of basketball and try to lock you down. That's Iowa State and Houston. And Houston did it all the way to the national championship and got beat. But if you look at the national championship game, they kind of played their game against Florida. Um, and it just Florida found a way to win, but it was more at Houston's pace. And I think that's kind of why I have Iowa State at four, is just because they're going to play defensive basketball. They may not be the most talented team, on the floor night in, night out. They may not be the team that scores the ball or scores the most. Um, but I think that they're going to do enough defensively to keep them in the top 4, 5, 6 range. But I will agree with you on Kansas. I have them at 5. The biggest thing for Kansas with me is Kansas is hard to preview because things kind of fell apart last year to a degree. And when you have a coach like Bill Self, you can obviously kind of hone that back in. Um, but to me, Kansas was one of those teams where you have Hunter Dickinson, and he was good. He's a good basketball player, but it seemed like he kind of fell off a little bit last
He
year.
did.
And you also have, what was it, KJ Adams,
Yep.
and man, as far as watching him play, he may be the most athletic guy in the country, but he seemed to me like he played out of control some. Um, and having that with a big guy that, falls off, you've got, a guy that's really athletic, but he's not really. The thing about KJ was it didn't seem to me like there was a lot of times where he really did anything major to help his team out. And then their point guard, who was their point guard? Harris.
Yeah, DeJuan Harris.
And it just seems like Kansas had a bunch of guys that could win one on one, but when you put them together, they didn't play well together. And I think in certain ways that favors them this year. Obviously, new team, new identity, kind of thing there. You kind of get rid of the guys that were really good in their own right, but they didn't mesh well team wise,
Yeah.
and you're able to replace that with arguably the best, if not one of the top three best coaches in the nation. That's always a recipe for success. But I think the Kansas and Carolina game in the first week of the season is going to tell a lot about both teams and their trajectory based on their conference.
Yeah. So my bottom feeders for this conference, I got Arizona State, Colorado, and UCF, and maybe
See,
Utah. Maybe Utah.
I have, and I don't know, I may completely miss this. I have Arizona State and I have Oklahoma State, but I have Cincinnati in the bottom three.
Oh, Cincinnati. Oh, I got them in the middle.
Yeah, I think they're kind of a team where, I mean, they could be moved up a couple spots. Um, but I have Utah and UCF just ahead of them. Um, don't really know why. I struggled with Cincy. I struggled with Utah, UCF,
Struggled with
Kansas
Utah.
State, and Colorado. Um, I think when I said earlier about 9 bids, I think you got Texas Tech, Houston, BYU, Iowa State, Kansas, Arizona, Baylor, West Virginia, and then I think you get one more in the mixture of TCU, Colorado, or Kansas State. I know Colorado is probably, I've got them a little higher than probably what most people would. Um, just, I really don't, I struggled with those kind of like 10 to 14. They could interchange at any clip. Um, and Kansas State kind of is, I guess, the outlier there. They could be moved up a couple. They could, but Cincy, I just kind of struggle with. And I looked at it and I was like, you know what? I really don't want to put them this low, but I'm like, I really don't know where else to put them. So Cincy may be an outlier. We'll just see. But I think the bottom two obviously are Oklahoma State and Arizona State, and I don't really think that's close.
Yeah, Arizona State for sure. So moving on to the Big East. I again, this is kind of like last year. A lot of people were buying into the UConn hype, and I just don't because I have St. John's at number one. I really, they got Ian Jackson. Rick Pitino just knows how to work the transfer portal um, really well. And I think St. John's probably wins the Big East by 2 or 3 games, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, St. John, and this is really hard to say about the Big East because with the SEC, the ACC, Big 12, Big 10, that they also have all this money that they devote to other sports. to football, especially. The Big East doesn't have that.
Yeah,
You
fair.
know, they have football. They have football teams. Some of these teams have football teams,
They ain't the
but
programs
not.
though.
You're
They're on the
not.
FCS.
Yeah, yeah. This hey, basketball is their bread and butter, and it's kind of. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, and I may eat my words, and that'll be fine. But I kind of think it's St. John's and a Gap, and then everybody else. Um, I think they've kind of got this on lockdown. I think three, or let's see, I think 2 through 4 could probably go any order. But I think St. John's is by far, above. And I'm not saying that, they pull a Duke and go,
Yeah.
19-1 in conference. I'm not saying that.
I have them losing
It's
three
a
games.
tough.
I have them losing 3 games
It's
in the Big
it,
East.
yeah. Yeah, it's a tough conference. I mean, like I said, when you're able to focus on basketball as your bread and butter, you obviously are able to, not have the distraction of other sports, things like that. It's your bread and butter, like I said. But St. John's is obviously we agree on that. But I'll say this: I can't stand UConn, probably outside
Okay.
of Duke, the team that I cannot stand. But I have them. I have them second in this conference, um, and the reason why I have Creighton after them. Um, and the reason I say that any of these three are interchangeable is because what scares me with Creighton is you have you have to go through this season without Kalkbrenner. Um, the issue with that, so you may say, well, we're just replacing him, we'll just have to replace him, and they did get a replacement. The biggest thing is I think it's going to be. Don't be surprised if Creighton ends up possibly in fifth or sixth, because Kalkbrenner absolutely elevated their floor defensively. He was ridiculous around the rim. Uh, and if they can't find somebody to even put up, half the numbers that he did, they could very well drop. But as for UConn, man, I can't stand Hurley. He's a good coach, but I
Yeah, I can't
don't
stand
like
him either.
him. I don't like his attitude. I just don't. I'm just not a Hurley fan. But man, UConn's tough, and
I mean, they
they're
they pushed Florida to the limits last year. If you remember that second round, that was a really good game. I really enjoyed that. I mean, again, I didn't like Hurley, but that was a good game out there. They pushed Florida to their limits.
well, and the other thing is, even after they had a, how do you say this, a very bad start to their season. I mean, they played in the tournament. I forget which
Lost to
turn which
Yeah, it was the Maui. I
they
think it
lost
was
to. Yeah,
Memphis.
they lost to Colorado, and then they lost to Memphis.
Yeah, that was
Um,
crazy,
which is wild. But
especially
but
for
but then
defending
there
champ.
again, yeah, and there again, you know, come March, where are they at? That's a coaching thing, and Hurley's good at it. Disregard the fact that I'm just not a big fan of him and don't like him. They're a good basketball team, and until they kind of go back to the middle of the pack and try to rebuild or whatever you want to call it, they're going to be a good basketball team. Um, but kind of to round out my top five, I've got Creighton at 3, Marquette at 4, and I have Villanova at 5.
That's right. You better. Let's see. Now, I agree. I agree with you completely on the UConn situation. Uh, Again, I hate UConn just as much as the next guy, but you gotta respect just Dan Hurley's coaching. Um, I like the return of Alex Caravan and Solo Ball. I love those two guys. Here's where I'm probably going to go out on a limb, and if you think I'm going to say Villanova, you're wrong. I'm actually going to put Marquette at number 3. I really like Marquette. Um, It's not really as much as the Marquette love that I'm putting towards this. It's more the Creighton hate. Because I think you summed it up well. We'll have to go through the season without Faulkner. Chase Ross for Marquette. I really like him. And then to round out my top five, I have Nova, and then I got Creighton. Again, this is more so. I mean, you can call it bias if you want to, but I really like what Nova's doing too. You can say I'm hopeful or whatever, but I mean, bringing in Kevin Willard, you can easily see that last year with Eric Dixon and even like Wooga Poplar, they had Jameer Burkus, Jordan Longino. That's a really solid, just big four guys that you have there. And if you have a coach like Bill Self or Calipari or Tom Izzo, you're going to go to March Madness, and you're probably going to win a game or two. A game or two. But Kyle Neptune was the big problem there at Villanova, and as a fan, you can see that. You have a very offensive powerhouse and somewhat defensive Eric Dixon. He was scoring the most points per game last year, and you couldn't do anything with him. You couldn't. I mean, the offense definitely ran through him, but you could tell that something was off, and it was definitely the coaching. I really like the addition of course, Kevin Willard and then Matt Hodge with Brian Duke Brennan. Um, I think Devin Askew, he's injured. Whenever he comes back, that's going to be dangerous too. And then Caden Lewis. I really like the guard player we're getting here. It's going to be really hard to replace Eric Dixon, but I think they do find a way to do it. And I think especially in the late games after kind of that winter break, I think that's going to be the real prime time for Nova to produce. Of course, getting Askew back, and I think Brennan may be injured until maybe the end of November. But of course, that kind of late surge is what I'm hoping for Nova. Just again, I think the main problem last year was, of course, old Neptune. I think they were averaging like in turnovers per game. They were like really high on that scale. They were definitely in the bottom 50 for turnover assist margin, and that is really bad. I think you take that away. I think you put them at four, and of course that's me. Creighton, kind of same thing you said. Replacing Kalkbrenner is going to be tough. He was a really good defensive presence. I like Owen Freeman, Blake Harper. I like their guards here, but I still got him at five. And then of course after that, I got Providence. Hargrove, I love him too. I drafted him, but I got Providence right after that, and I think like these next few spots could definitely be really varied. I think the Big East is kind of like the Big 12 in that sense, except it's not a clear front runner. You have St. John's as your clear front runner, and then from 2 to 7 can really vary. It just kind of depends on how the season goes, especially with injuries and everything. But and also the bottom feeders in that conference, obviously you got DePaul.
Yeah, I think this one, this conference is divided up in sections. Basically, like I said, I think St. John's is obviously the front runner, but then I think you can take UConn, Creighton, and Marquette, all three, and you can kind of put them, bunch them together, and they could literally be in any kind of arrangement there. And then I think you can take Villanova, Xavier, Georgetown, um, and you can kind of put them, kind of the same way. They could interchange. I think Georgetown's going to be better than what they've been in the past. And then I think bottom. I mean, you got Butler, DePaul, Providence, and Seton Hall. Um, it's kind of pitiful down there at the bottom right now.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at possibly like 7 teams contending for the tournament. I'm really high on the Big East this year. Of course, you got your top five, and I'm not down on Providence. I like Providence, and of course Xavier's going to be in there too, um, contending kind of for that midsection. But yeah, those bottom feeders definitely DePaul. I think Seton Hall down there too. Not sure about the Providence Tate Butler. You can make the call for it too. Really just Seton Hall and DePaul are the main ones I have down there.
Yeah, yeah. Providence could go. I think Providence could maybe jump up there. I just I don't I just really don't know. They're not the Providence of old, and Seton Hall isn't either. Um, usually Seton Hall and Providence are, and even Georgetown and Butler. Those are all four of those teams are teams that traditionally, I mean, if you look back, traditionally they're really good basketball teams, and they're just not. All of those teams are not where they need to be right now. They may surprise us. Have no clue. Um, but to me, those four teams, when Providence and Seton Hall and Butler especially are stronger, to me the Big East is, with the exception of like the SEC conference last year, the way it was, to me the Big East is the deepest conference. Um, they just like I said, their focus is basketball. Um, and they're just able they're just traditionally a really good basketball conference.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the SEC here. This is the conference that I'm
Yeah.
kind of ready to look at here.
Oh man,
Um,
man, this is like the opposite of the Big East in my opinion. You could put honestly, and I wouldn't argue too much with you. You could put five different teams at the top spot, and I wouldn't be laughing at you, so to say. Um, who you guys your top team? I'm really interested to see who you got.
it, it's it, it's kind of Florida till it isn't. Um,
Yes, there we go.
I just don't I just don't think they fall off very much. Um, and I mean, let's be honest here. Outside of the Yukon game and the Houston game, um, it was kind of like the Yukon
Yeah, back in
national
2022,
champion. Yeah,
23. My bad.
where where you just kind of knew. I mean, you just kind of knew that was the team. I mean, the last 2 years, I've had the national champion in my bracket picked right. I had Yukon in 23, and it was easy.
Yeah,
And
UConn,
last
yeah,
year,
that's easy. And
and
then
I had
Florida.
Florida last year. I just really, I mean, after watching Florida play, to me last year, it was kind of going to be an SEC team. If it wasn't Florida, it's going to be somebody else. And the reason I say that is, it's kind of like I was hitting on a little bit earlier about teams being battle tested. The ACC needed to beef up their schedule to not only the non-conference, but the hiring of Will Wade and
Yeah,
getting some of these coaches in there that can actually coach, good, competent basketball that elevate your conference. Also having that in conference competition to be able to raise you up. That way, when you come to March, you're battle tested. Each game in March is going to be a meaningful game. And the ACC outside of Duke and Louisville, but Louisville kind of had a little bit of an early exit,
yeah,
in comparison. Outside of Duke, there was just, I mean, there was no chance. I mean, like I said, you go back to the ACC and SEC. Um, um, my mind went blank. Um, Challenge. You
right.
go into that. I mean, the SEC just steamrolled the ACC. I mean, it was not even close. Like usually, it's pretty. It's competitive. A
ACC
lot of
had
time
one win.
the
I think they had one,
yeah,
maybe two. I think they had one though.
up until the last couple of years, I mean, the ACC, kind of, and I know that the ACC did it with the Big Ten, for a while. The ACC SEC challenge is relatively new, but it wasn't even close last year. And that's the thing about the SEC. I mean, realistically, I'll just be honest here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 10
Oh, I thought you were gonna say
pretty
11. I
much.
got 11.
I've got 10 pretty much as a lot, but I can see 11 really easy. Um, I think that the teams. I'll just say it like this: I've got Florida at 1. I've got Tennessee at 2. The reason I have Tennessee above
Okay.
Kentucky and Alabama is because I think that Tennessee has the best freshman. I think Nate Ament, now I watched Tennessee
Oh
and
my
Duke.
goodness.
Um,
Yeah, that was actually a really good exhibition game. I like what Tennessee did there. It looked like they was able to hang with them. Now here's the thing. If you, the Florida game at Tuscaloosa last year is really what I'm pointing to. Makes them the number one team. Um, the ball movement, and of course, just the absolute scoring fest they put on Alabama. And I know they ain't got the best defense, but it was so hard to stop, and it felt like they was doing that just kind of pick and roll action. But since our guys are so tall, you can just throw it over anybody whose name is not Cliff Omerai. And I mean, right now, I think what you said is perfect. They're up there, and they're number one until they ain't. Alex Condon, I like him a lot. Xavier Lee, like him too. Um, and this is where this is where it splits right here because I have Alabama at number two. And I think it's because I really love Phylon. Phylon is just a beast. He's playing like an NBA player right now. And Aiden Holloway, you could see him. He was coming out of his shell last year. Same for Phylon too. The loss of Jaren ain't too good, but I ain't worried about right now. So we got Noah Williamson, 7 foot guy, kind of like the Carolina situation if you think about it. He was averaging 17.6 points last year and about 8 rebounds last year too. I just think NATO's did a great job of kind of covering for the losses that he made. Of course, they're not going to be nowhere near as powerful as last year because they lost Grant Nelson, Mark Sears, um, and even the Estrada loss from 2 years ago. That was really tough to cover too. But I think they did it well. I think NATO went out there and he got what he needed, and I got them a second. Bo Bowen is also at Alabama now, and I like him too. I have Tennessee in third. Um, the only reason I don't like Kentucky, I don't know. It seems like they always find a way to choke, and it could be stereotypical or superstitious or whatever. But every year I'm not high on Kentucky, and they end up finishing third or fourth, maybe fifth in the SEC. And then it's always an early exit. They never go to the Final Four, at least these past 10 years. So I got Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, and then I actually have Arkansas. Calipari going there. That's a big deal. A lot of people following him there too. And then I have Kentucky. Um, who you say you rounded out your top five with?
so my top 5 is Florida, Tennessee. I actually have Kentucky 3, Alabama 4, and Arkansas number 5. Um, the biggest explanation for me with Kentucky, let me say this first. I think any one of those 5 teams can win it. Um, maybe Florida's not what they were last year, and I mean, rightfully so. I mean, you won the national championship last year. I mean, it's hard to repeat.
Unless
But
you're
I
an
mean,
ABC
I
fan.
think yeah. I mean, and I think realistically, Florida has a good chance to repeat. Um, but that's also due to the conference that they play in. It's they may lose 4 or 5 conference games, but look at the competition they play night in, night out. But I think realistically, you could make an argument for any of those 5 teams to win the conference. I mean, Florida is Florida. They still got some pieces from last year's team. They just reloaded. Tennessee, talented freshman and Nate Ament. He didn't really look that great against Duke, but I don't think that's a true representation of what he's going to be this year. He had a lot of shots, but he couldn't get a lot to fall. And it could just be freshman jitters or
Yeah, something like that.
whatever it may be. Um, the thing about Kentucky, what's got me high on Kentucky right now, and this is kind of where I've said it a couple times now. You can take a lot away from the scrimmage. the way Kentucky kind of beat Purdue, and it's like you said, this is kind of stereotypical Kentucky. Um, they always seem to come up in a big spot and win some big games, conference. But then they always seem to go to the second round of the NCAA tournament and find some way to lose to a nobody. But I think we put too much emphasis on that just because it's happened a lot. But what we're not taking into account sometimes, and then I have to be careful of this too, it's not Calipari anymore. It's
Mark,
Mark Pope, and I think Pope is not he's not going to let his teams just sleepwalk like that.
right,
I know that you may have some of that kind of carry over to Pope from Calipari. But I think the more Kentucky plays, the more you'll see a lot of that filter out, and Kentucky will return to kind of being the Kentucky of old. The thing that scares me about Kentucky is they always seem to go play big games, and they can look absolutely terrible against Alabama A&M, and squeak by and win by 8 or 10, which is what I would consider squeaking by a team like that. And then they'll
right.
just go blow somebody's doors off that it's a good quality team and go win by 25. If Kentucky can ever learn to make playing basketball consistently, if they can ever get that consistency back, they're scary. And I think the more they play under Mark Pope, the more you're going to see that consistency of Kentucky. So that's why I have them three. Um, Alabama's obviously, like I said, any one of these five teams could be number one. They just have the pieces to do so. They play in a conference that elevates them night in, night out. They play against quality competition each night. Um, in Alabama, I think Nate Oates is one of the best coaches in college basketball. There was a lot of big schools after him. Uh, you know, he his name come up in a couple of different coaching searches, and there's a reason why. Um, Arkansas at 5. This is kind of the opposite of Kentucky. Is the more that Mark Pope's at Kentucky, I think the more consistently that they'll play. But I think the Calipari effect is at Arkansas now. I think talent wise, I think they're one of the most talented teams in the SEC. But
Right.
I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to hand the keys over to Calipari and say, "Hey, look, I need you to win big games, and I need you to win when it matters." Until he can prove otherwise, I just really don't think that Arkansas has the potential you know to pop into the top three. Now I said I do think any of these top five are interchangeable and can win and be at number one in the conference. But the thing about Arkansas is they're going to have to find some kind of consistency that these Calipari teams can't seem to find for whatever reason. If they ever get consistently
Damn.
to the point, if they ever get to the point consistently where they need to be, they can do that. If they don't, then I don't see that happening. But Auburn is number 6. I think they could be considered possibly into that top 5 rotation. The only issue
Right.
with Auburn is Bruce Pearl leaving. Something happened to your screen. Looks like it's just me. Let me see if I can get him back in here. It looks like he may have lost connection. I'm not really sure what's going on. But I'll round off the video here. If he jumps back on, we'll let him back in. um, the biggest thing to me about the SEC conference is it's obviously to me it's still the deepest conference in college basketball. You're still looking at the majority of these teams, are very, they could very well be tournament teams. To me, realistically, the only teams that aren't truly tournament teams is South Carolina, Georgia, LSU, and Missouri. Vanderbilt's kind of on that bubble. I don't really think that they are, but I think that with the right breaks, they could be. I think those top 5 or 6 are realistically interchangeable. Auburn worries me a little bit just because of the Bruce Pearl situation. And it may not be anything to worry about. He's probably left the program in as good a shape as what one can be left in. Then the next few teams, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Texas, and Oklahoma. To me, it's kind of same song and dance. They can be interchangeable, but they're still going to be solid basketball teams. And then, like I said, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma are kind of those two teams that could find herself on the bubble. To me, but I mean, you're looking at possibly 12 bids. Possible. I think there's 10. I think there's truly 10 teams in the SEC that gets in. But I think there can be anywhere from 10 to up to 12. Overall, just kind of looking through this, this is one of the most excited. It seems to be one of the most exciting seasons that we're about to come up on and watch. I just think with the ACC getting to be stronger, putting more emphasis on the fact that they kind of got their tails kicked the last couple of years. I think them putting an emphasis back on basketball and making sure that they're prioritizing, that sport too. I think you're going to see more competition throughout. A lot of these ACC teams are going to go play Big 12 teams or SEC teams, and there's going to be more competition. And when the ACC is good, it makes everything better. This is the conference that you used to look at and talk about as the premier conference of college basketball. And it wasn't really close. The SEC used to be the conference that nobody cared about. Oh, I see you got it back.
Yeah, I don't know what just happened. I lost my dang my camera must have died or something.
Oh, I got
What
you.
was
Well,
you talking about? Auburn or what?
I kind of kept it going. No, I was
No,
just
okay.
saying, Auburn. Auburn is a team that I think could jump into that top 5. But I think with the loss of Bruce Pearl, you're looking at, possibly things going a little south for them. Now, with that being said, I think he's definitely left that program in as good a condition as what you can leave a program. But I just think there'll be a little bit of a fallback there with Auburn. And then the next
Now,
teams I have. Go ahead.
one thing I kind of want to talk about is Mississippi State. I think they added Jaden Epps. I really like Josh Hubbard. Just kind of, I think they could sneak up there if they wanted to. I'm looking at Mississippi State vying for a 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament if everything goes right. I think their floor is really just barely missing it. But their ceiling is definitely somewhere up there where I just had them.
Yeah, I have Mississippi State as ninth in the conference right now, but that's mainly because I think the top six are the top six. I don't think you can throw any of those other teams into the top six because the top six are so stout. I have Auburn at six, or let's see, one, two. I have Ole Miss. I have Ole Miss at seven, Texas A&M at eight, and then
I'm on this
Mississippi
side.
State.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variance with the SEC, especially after. Well, no, you don't even have to say after the top five. You can say even from 1 to 10. There's a bunch of variance. Um, I think Vandy's a sneaky team. Texas is a sneaky team. I think a lot of teams. I think you're looking at another possibly double digit amount of teams making the NCAA tournament again. Of course, that top five is probably going to be. I think the SEC may get 2 1 seeds, maybe. Um, this is definitely, in my opinion, probably the best conference again. It really comes down to the SEC and the Big 12. I think the ACC made a big step, but I don't know if it's any better than the Big 12 and the SEC now. They'll definitely have more than they did last year because, of course, I think they only had Duke, UNC, Louisville in last year. I think you're looking at NC State getting in. Of course, Virginia, SMU, and maybe somebody else, maybe like Notre Dame or Syracuse or something like that. But the SEC definitely, in my opinion, is the best conference again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think truly the SEC has 10 bids, and I don't think they get any less than that. The only four that I truly see not getting into the tournament is South Carolina, Georgia, LSU, and Missouri. I have Vanderbilt at what I guess would be, let's see, that's seventh, eighth, that 12th in the conference. But I mean, I honestly think Vanderbilt could go to the tournament. I mean, I just do. Um, I have Oklahoma right above them, and then Texas above Oklahoma. And I mean, I really think anywhere from seventh to 12th. I mean, once again, I think you're looking at something that's interchangeable. Any of those teams could finish in seventh. Any of those teams could finish in 12th. And the issue with that is, it's kind of like anything else when you hear about the SEC in football. You
Right.
know, everybody has the debate on the Big Ten and the SEC. Well, the Big Ten's the top dog. Okay, okay, yeah, maybe on the top team, yeah, maybe it's Ohio State and everybody else, whatever you want to say. But I kind of don't think that Ohio State, if they had to play Alabama and then turn around and play Florida and then turn around and play Tennessee and then play Georgia and then play Ole Miss and then play Texas, I don't think that they just come out of that unscathed. And that's the same thing in this conference. You're going to get just like Florida. I mean, Florida could easily lose to Kentucky, to Tennessee, to Alabama, to Arkansas, to Auburn, and they could lose to any of those other teams. I mean, I know it's on any given night, but realistically, what I'm saying is you could split depending on what their schedule looks like. Florida could split with Tennessee. Florida could split with Kentucky. Florida could split with Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, and they could win the SEC with 5 conference losses.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of the thing. These teams, they have no choice but to beat up on each other, and it just and in football, with it being such a contact sport, that doesn't always bode well health wise. to be able to match up with teams that are a little bit fresher due to the conference they play in or the schedule that they play. Basketball is not necessarily the same thing. You want a little bit more battle tested. It's not you're not running at full force at each other, trying to hit each other and knock each other's heads off. Is it a physical game? Yeah, absolutely it is. But it's different, and it's a lot about who gets streaky. It's a lot about who gets hot at the right time. Um, and it's a lot about to me, you know, there's more of a coaching aspect in basketball. I mean, there obviously is in football. I'm not taking away from football, but what I'm saying is, um, in basketball, it seems that coaching makes a huge difference. Um, you could argue that if you gave Carolina, say for example, if Will Wade was to come to Carolina, or if Nate Oates was to come to
Yeah.
Carolina, you could argue that the last 2 years they would have been a completely different basketball team.
Oh,
And
for
it's the
sure.
same way.
I'm not big on
It's
Hubert
the
Davis.
same way for football. It is, but you pretty much you kind of have one guy running the show in basketball. I mean, I know you have assistants. I'm not taking away from what those assistants do. I'm not taking away from what they contribute. They obviously, but you're managing 5 guys on the floor at one time. That's you're not managing 11 guys and then another different 11 guys on defense and then another 11 different guys on special teams. There's a lot more. Position coach in football can make your team better just because of the position coach. A lot of times your position coaches make your head coach look better than what he is. Basketball is completely different. Head coaches mean so much more per se to their basketball team than what maybe a head coach does to football to a degree. Now I know, like I said, that take that with a grain of salt, but
I
I
see. I see what
think
you're saying. Yeah, because
I,
I mean, again, you can look at honestly Villanova. Whenever they had Jay Wright, national title contenders nearly every year, and then once they had Kyle Neptune, that it went downhill. And same thing with Cotton Alabama. Once they got Nate Oates, I think Nate Oates, since he's got there, the past 3 years, what is it? They've made 3 consecutive Elite Eight appearances, and I don't think that's as much skill wise. There again, take it with a grain of salt. There's still skill involved, especially with the players, but coaching leads teams to the deep runs of March Madness, the Cinderellas, even like Will Wade with McNeese State. Um, they're more prominent, and they have a better impact on just kind of leading the team. Whereas football, you got to have an offensive coordinator. And I know there's your guys for basketball too, but you have your wide receiver coach, your linebacker coach. You have all these coaches, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. There's so many different areas you have to be able to touch on to make your team better as a whole. Whereas in basketball, you're all playing on the same court. You all have sort of the same job. That's defend your basket and put the ball in the other team's basket. And I think definitely that's something that's different between basketball and football, especially at the college level. Coaching definitely has a bigger impact on leadership and just those deep runs and just how good your team is.
yeah, absolutely. I think another thing that goes into basketball more so than football um, is obviously your clock management. Knowing when to
Oh,
stop a
yeah.
team run with a timeout. Knowing when to you know just to take timely timeouts. And the other thing is too is football has ways of being able to stop the clock. If you don't have timeouts, you can get up to the ball and spike it. Basketball, you can't throw the ball out of bounds and then get the ball back. So clock management has to be taken into account. And coaches that are able to take a timeout to stop a team's run, or take a timeout to set up a good inbounds play to assure that you get a good look at the basket.
Right.
Those are the things that coaching does in basketball. And once again, nothing against football coaches. There's just more coaches, more minds, more heads thinking together, and you're able to divert as a head coach a little bit more of the responsibility. Um, you don't hear of assistant coaches getting fired in college basketball. You know, you may every now and then, but you see the head coaches get fired.
It's
You
more of
see
a
all
main
the
man
time.
show. It's definitely more of a main
Yeah.
man show in basketball than it is football.
Yeah, I mean, you still see assistants obviously get fired. I'm not saying they don't get fired. I'm just saying it's much more of a headline when you see a team say, say like, well, take an Arkansas for an example. They fire the head coach, and then Petrino gets in there and just fires the coordinators on the defensive side of the ball. Usually a lot of times it's a last resort. If the head coach is feeling that seat get hot, he realizes he needs to make a change to maybe save his job. Probably the first person to go is going to be offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. It's just there's a lot that goes into football because of the way that it's played and the way that it's the way that it's set up, defense, offense. There's different makeups every side of the ball. Basketball's not that way. You
Right.
have your five guys on the court. They go down, they shoot the ball, they come back, they defend the ball. Until you substitute, that's the guys that are doing every aspect of that game. So it's up to you to recognize what you have, what you need to do, and how you need to do it. As a head coach, your assistants are still there to do the same thing as what they would in football. But you're going to take the fall if your assistants aren't what they need to be, and it's trickling over into your head coaching, and you don't really know what to do. You're the one that's going to take the fall. Your assistant's not.
Right.
But
Yeah, with basketball, I mean, you can take a practice, for example, and you can coach all your guys, all 15 guys, and you're going towards the same goal, and that's just again scoring, and then going back and playing defense. But with football, in your different positions, you have different goals, especially on your side of the field. Offense is trying to get down the field and score, while your defense, of course, is just trying to take away the ball from the offense. And I think that's where they differ the biggest. More even in basketball.
yeah, yeah. But anyways, I think that's pretty much it as far as the Power Five go there. We got off on a little bit of a tangent there towards the end, but um,
No big deal.
I'm, I'm I'm anxious to see what this year is. This is kind of the most excited I've been for a college basketball season in recent memory. I think the ACC being able to elevate obviously makes for better basketball. But nonetheless, I'm sure we'll have another episode here, a couple of days, maybe when the season starts, opening night or something. We'll kind of get on here and
That's
talk about a couple
kind of
of
review
games.
because again, that first week is actually really good. Villanova and BYU, Kansas, North Carolina. I think there's good games, so we'll review that. I don't know what's going on in there, but that's just kind of it. That's all I got.
Yeah, me too. And we'll try to get these kinks worked out of these podcasts, the connection issues or whatever we're having,
Yeah,
and
that was
try
on
to
me. I
get
should have
this
charged my phone. That was on me. But
up
that's
on. It's trial and error.
uh,
But yeah, man, that's pretty much it from me. But we'll try to get another show mapped out here and planned, and get back on here and talk about a couple more things when when the time comes.
okay. All right. Well, I think that will be it. Sounds good.